everyone, and welcome to today's Wyoming Small Business Development Center webinar. We're partnering with the University of Wyoming School of Pharmacy for the SBIR STTR at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences NCATS webinar today. This event is offered under our U.S. Small Business Administration Federal and State Technology Partnership funding. I'm Kelly Hagler-Cornish. I'm the Program Manager for the Wyoming SBIR STTR initiative. We help innovators with Phase 1 and Phase 2 SBIR proposals as part of the SBDC network. The Wyoming SBDC network is hosted by the University of Wyoming and funded by the Wyoming Small Business Administration and the Wyoming Business Council. We offer confidential, no-cost advising, education, training, and resources throughout the business life cycle. Co-hosting with us today is Dr. Kim Kruger, Dean of the School of Pharmacy. Thanks, Kim, for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly. We appreciate the work that you and the Wyoming Small Business Development Center Network has done to help our pharmacy faculty and faculty across campus. You've helped them bring their ideas to market. I'm excited to participate in today's program from the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences and learning from Dr. Rajagopal today. So thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you, everybody. I just want to give you a quick announcement that the Wyoming Business Council, which is one of our funding partners, also offers SBIR Phase 1 and Phase 2 matching programs. I forgot to mention that earlier, and it's important for our Wyoming small businesses to know that. I'm excited to see so many of our attendees joining us today. Also joining us today is Monica Patton. I'll let Monica introduce herself and introduce our speaker. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody, I'm the Research and Commercialization Director for the Wyoming SBDC network. So if you're submitting an SBIR or STTR grant, you can send it to me for a free technical review before you submit. I can also help with inventor's due diligence. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. Meena Rajagopal. And Meena is an experienced scientist in translational research and has worked in several labs, including academia and research institutes in the Washington, D.C. metro area. She is the program director of the NCATS Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Research grant and contract programs. In this role, Meena oversees the NCATS SBIR STTR program, manages the portfolio of SBIR STTR grants, and is involved in the SBIR outreach activities and serves on the NCATS primary point of contact for the Small Business Programs Management Committee. Before joining NCATS, Meena was a scientist at the NIH and carried out translational proteomics research in partnership with the investigators at Tulane University. Meena was a principal investigator on the NIH SBIR grant application while in Georgetown University, where she also coordinated various metabolomics research programs at the Metabolomics Facility in Lombardi Cancer Center. Thank you so much for joining us, Meena.
Thank you, Monica, for that wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to collaborate with the University of Wyoming on this webinar. So I would like to start off with a quick introduction to who we are and what we do at the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. The National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, NCATS for short, is one of the 27 institutes and centers within the NIH. And we are one among the 24 institutes with funding authority that participate in the small business program. NCATS' mission is to accelerate the translational science process so more treatment options can be made available to all patients more rapidly. The NCATS Small Business Program is supports and funds projects, mainly platform technologies that have the potential to ultimately have clinical implications across a number of human diseases and conditions. So I mentioned that our institute's goal is to accelerate the translational science process. So what is translational science, right? So translational science, as we define it here, is the conversion of basic science discoveries into health solutions. This process, as we all know, is neither straightforward or simple. So as shown in the animation, while there can be n number of putative therapeutics identified in a lab setting, only a fraction of this actually makes it to the other end of the pipeline to reach clinic or patients. There are a number of roadblocks in this pipeline, and NCATS wants to facilitate programs that not only identifies these bottlenecks, but also mitigates them. That ultimately leads to the development of more treatment options made available to all patients more rapidly. This slide lists a few solutions to these bottlenecks that NCATS is currently working on improving. And by no means, this is an exhaustive list. For instance, NCATS would like to see if we can understand what's similar across a number of human diseases that can help us develop multiple treatments at the same time. Can we develop models to predict how a patient responds to a treatment? And how can we leverage real-world data, AI, and quantum science technologies to address public health needs? NCATS is a little different from the other institutes of the NIH, and what I mean by that is NCATS is not focused towards a particular disease or a body organ. Like I mentioned, we support programs and other projects that have clinical implications across a wide number of human diseases and conditions. That said, NCATS does have a high interest in rare diseases and is a home for rare disease research. Now I will give a brief overview of the NIH Small Business Program. So SBIR, which stands for Small Business Innovation Research, and STTR, an acronym for Small Business Technology Transfer, are both what's called America's Seed Fund. And it is a congressionally mandated program and is one of the largest source of early stage funding available to eligible US-based small businesses. At the NIH, the budget set aside for the SBIR STTR program is about $1.2 billion that is shared among the participating institutes at NIH. I believe this one and the next is on who can apply to the SBIR STTR program. And I want to let you know that the eligibility criteria are in fact set forth by the US Small Business Administration. NIH has nothing to do with it. So my recommendation is that you please click on the SEED website on the slide to find out if your company is eligible to apply to the small business program. By the way, the SEED website is a wealth of information, and I would strongly encourage you to check it out. I covered this one too, so we will be sharing the slide deck with you, with all the registrants and the attendees, so you can, read through some of those eligibility criterias. So here, I wanted to list some key differences between the two programs. Under the SBIR program, the small businesses are allowed to collaborate with the nonprofit research institute. However, under the STTR mechanism, it is mandatory for the small business to partner with a nonprofit research institute, such as a US-based college or university, or other federally funded research and development centers, what we call FFRDCs. There are also work-related requirements that differentiate between the two programs. For instance, under the SBIR, the small business can outsource up to 33% in phase 1 and up to 50% under the phase 2. And I will explain what these phases are in just a little bit. But under the STTR mechanism, a minimum of 40% of the proposed work has to be carried out at the small business, and at least 30% of the work should be done at the nonprofit research institute. There are also differences in the primary employment of the principal investigator. So under the SBIR program, the primary employment, which is at least 50% of time and effort, has to be with the small business. But there is some flexibility under the STTR mechanism. So under the STTR mechanism, the primary employment of the principal investigator can be either with the company or the nonprofit research institute. But please note that irrespective of what program you apply to, the award or the money always goes to the small business. So with this one, I just wanted to flag to your attention that there are these special designations given to small businesses, like the socially and economically disadvantaged businesses and women-owned businesses. There is no preference given to these in terms of funding considerations, but we highly encourage our applicants to self-identify at the time of registration because this information is tracked mainly to see if there needs to be more outreach done to these specific or done targeting these specific groups. So there are several reasons why you should consider applying to the NIH Small Business Program. The budget tracks the agency's budget, hence it is stable, and predictable most of the times. The funds are non-dilutive, meaning that the IP rights belong to the company. Once awarded, there are several resources that I will talk about that the small businesses can leverage to further develop their technology. One additional benefit to applying to the NIH Small Business Program is the peer review. So every application to the Small Business Program undergoes a rigorous peer review process. And what this allows for the small business is an opportunity to go outside of the NIH looking for funds and other collaborations, because now your science or work is validated by, guess who? The National Institutes of Health. So the NIH Small Business Program is a phased program. Please note that these phases are not to be confused with the phases of a clinical trial. This is completely different. So under the phase 1, we are looking for applications that typically, talk about a proof of concept or a feasibility type of work. The SBA set budget hard cap for a phase 1 is about $314,000. But each institute within the NIH, we have our own topics of high interest that is within our mission space, and these are called waiver topics. And if you wish to apply under one of those NCATS waiver topics, you can request up to $350,000 for the phase 1. Then there is the phase 2, which is a more full-blown R&D type of application that has a commercialization plan built into it. The commercialization plan is looked at very carefully by the reviewers. So under the phase 1, again, there are 2 different mechanisms, a direct to phase 2 and a fast track. The direct to phase 2 is where an applicant has sufficient preliminary data that they want to apply at the next level. And the fast track phase 2 is when you can apply for phase 1 and phase 2 combined. So contingent upon meeting the phase 1 milestones, the phase 2 award is made. For a phase 2, the SBA set budget hard cap is about $2 million. However, if you apply again under one of the NCATS waiver topics, you can request up to $2.15 million over a period of 2 years. And all these budget amounts are actually in total costs. You should be able to see the list of NCATS waiver topics that is linked to the omnibus solicitations. We also have phase 2B programs, and not all institutes participate in the phase 2B. NCATS does, and this is where we would like to support our applicants get through a key inflection point, say you need a state-of-the-art instrumentation or you're filing for IND. So we would want to provide funds up to $1 million per year for 3 years, for a maximum of 3 years. But the only caveat being NCATS should have funded your phase 2. In the phase 3, this is where, say, if you were to apply to a different agency like the DoD, they would buy the technology from you, but NIH is never the customer. So at NCATS, we would like for our awardees to think of an exit strategy and graduate out of the program. The NCATS Small Business Program, like I said, is supportive of our mission in accelerating translational science. Towards this, our interests fall under these 4 main buckets: preclinical drug discovery and development, biomedical, clinical, and health research informatics, clinical dissemination and implementation research, and rare diseases and unmet needs. And each main topic has several subtopics, and I would strongly encourage you to please visit our website to learn more. I have also provided a QR code in the slide that you can scan to learn more about our research interest. Please reach out to me if you have an idea that you would like to propose under an SBIR STTR mechanism, and I'm happy to let you know if the work would be of interest to NCATS. If it is, I'm also happy to schedule a call with you to discuss further and clarify any questions that you might have regarding the submission process or other related questions. At the very least, I will, if the work is not of interest to NCATS, I will connect you with my colleagues from the other NIH institutes that I think would be more interested in your work. So please feel free to reach out. So the graphics that you see here is a snapshot in time of our SBIR STTR portfolio data. As you can see, the pie chart indicates that the majority of the awards made is in the preclinical drug discovery and development bucket. We have also funded applications in the other main topic areas. Here, I wanted to list the different funding mechanisms that are available under the NIH Small Business Program. About 90 to 95% of the applications that come to NCATS is under the omnibus solicitations. And this is an investigator-initiated grant funding mechanisms. And there are 3 standard due dates every year: January 5th, April 5th, and September 5th. And if there is a holiday during one of these days, the due dates moves to the next business day. So each institute within the NIH also puts out targeted funding announcements in areas that are of high priority to them. And I will talk about one such targeted funding announcements in just 2 shakes. We also have what's called contract solicitations that happens once a year, and the call for proposals typically go out sometime in October-November timeframe. So the targeted NOFO that I wanted to spotlight is the industrialization and translation of extracellular vesicles for use in regenerative medicine. That has an upcoming deadline in a couple of months. In fact, October 6th is the deadline. The main objective for this funding announcement is to support platform-oriented technology development that is associated with the production, manufacturing, and use of extracellular vesicles as therapeutics in regenerative medicine. Please reach out to my colleague, Dr. Christine Happel, listed as the primary scientific POC in the NOFO. So here I wanted to give you a sense of the timeline involved in the NIH SBIR STTR funding mechanism. So let's pick the upcoming September deadline. So once you submit the application, the Center for Scientific Review, a completely different institute within the NIH, will assign your application to a study section for peer review. This typically happens around October, November. If your application is discussed, it gets a score, and summary statements for, in fact, all applications that are received for the September due date are made available within 30 days after the review meeting. If your application gets a priority score that is within the fundable range for NCATS, my office will work with our NCATS grants management team and budget office to include your application in a funding plan that will be taken for NCATS Advisory Council meeting and leadership approval in January or February at the latest. And then the application has to go through other administrative review, and it'll be March or April by the time you will hear a decision on your application. As you can tell, there are a number of different offices and divisions and institutes that work together during this SBIR STTR process. So it could take up to 8 to 9, 10 months sometimes to know the funding decision on your application. I know nobody likes the waiting game, but I would ask that you please keep the benefits of applying to this program like the non-dilutive one that I mentioned earlier and consider applying. All that said, I would also encourage you to connect with the program officer listed in your application after the summary statement is released, and because at that time the program officers can tell you if your application is likely to move forward for funding considerations or not, and you should discuss next steps with them. So now I will share some tips that you will hopefully find helpful while putting together your SBIR STTR application. The first and foremost advice is for you to read through the funding announcement carefully and reach out to the program officer again to make sure your proposed work is a good fit for the institute. If you are working on a particular disease, the IC that you are likely to apply to is a no-brainer. But if the project is more broad, then I suggest that you check out the NIH Reporter and Matchmaker tools to learn about projects in an area similar to yours that has been funded by the NIH institutes, and get in touch with that program officer from that particular institute. Next, please submit your applications early. I have had so many last-minute SOS calls and emails that there has been some kind of an error and the companies had trouble submitting their application. There is nothing we can do about it with respect to these errors, and you would have to get in touch with the ERA support team to fix it. So submit early to avoid these last-minute tense situations. We have the NIH Assist tool that is a streamlined way to submit your application, and I would strongly encourage you to make use of this tool. Before I move on to the next slide, I do want to reiterate that it is very important that you talk to program officers and make sure your application is of interest to the. I cannot emphasize enough that if you are thinking to apply for seed funding, it is important that you get started with the registrations early on. Each of these registrations can take anywhere from 5 to 7 business days or longer sometimes, and you cannot apply to the program unless you complete all these required registrations. So if you have applied to the NIH grant funding, you are probably familiar with a number of these review criteria. For the SBIR STTR applications specifically, the reviewers, since it's a small business grant, the reviewers will look for the commercialization potential of your technology or product. So please note that while a commercialization plan is an integral part of the phase 2 application, I always encourage phase 1 applicants to say a few lines on what their commercialization potential and strategy are for their tool or product. In short, the review panel will basically look for whether there is a gap in the field of your specific area of work, and how does your tool or technology address this gap? Are you bringing something new and novel to the table? Does the team bring in all the expertise and experiences that is required for the successful completion of the project? Does the team have access to resources that is required for the successful completion of the project? So those are some of the review criteria that the panel will look for in your application. I would encourage you to go to the CSR's website to read more on this topic. So here I want to go over some of the common mistakes that we have seen in applications, right? So first and foremost, what is the significance? Is there a need for the proposed product or technology? Lack of clear description of the gap in the field, inadequate discussion around the technology, milestones being too diffuse, and proposing to accomplish unrealistic amount of work during the given timeline are some reasons why your application may not do well at peer review. I recommend that you check out examples of successfully funded applications that our awardees have graciously agreed to share, and I will talk about this in just a little bit. So like I said earlier, it can take up to 8 to 10 months to know the decision on your application. And we recognize that it can be hard and disappointing when an application is either not discussed or scores are outside of the fundable range for the institute. But I recommend that you take the comments noted by the reviewers in the summary statement as a roadmap to put in a stronger application the next time around. It is also a good idea to talk to program officers after the summary statement is out to get their feedback. Program officers listen into these peer review meetings so they can provide additional insights and feedback to putting together a stronger application. And historically, I can tell you that I have seen resubmissions score better when the applicant has addressed the weaknesses noted by the first panel. So the takeaway from this slide is that please don't give up and work with your program officer while preparing the resubmission. So now I would like to mention some of the resources that we have available for both applicants and awardees. The first one is the NCATS specific resource that I'm very proud to share with you all today. My office has worked hard with the NIH FOIA office and our grantees to have sample NCATS funded SBIR STTR applications available to you. In fact, we have 4 applications in the pipeline ready to be posted on the NCATS Small Business Programs Resources webpage in the coming days. If you go to our website now, you will see a sample summary statement for a funded STTR award already posted, and our comms team is working as I speak now to make the STTR applications 508 compliant and get them uploaded. I encourage you to keep an eye out for these sample applications. And again, we're very happy to be able to provide this valuable resource to the small business community. Given these sample applications, give these sample applications a read, and you can get a sense of how high the bar is or what the rigor is like to put together a successful application to NCATS. Granted, they may not be in your specific area of work, but I would still encourage you to check them out. So the NIH Seed Office runs what's called the Technical and Business Assistance Program. And there are a couple of different ways to request TABA consulting services. One, when you put in your parent, at the time of submission of your parent grant. But if you're not ready to request TABA funds at that time, you can request it as an admin supplement once the parent award is made. So through this TABA consulting program, companies who are our awardees will be working with NIH contractors who can help you with, in different aspects, like say market analysis, IP support, for example. And under a phase one, NCATS will pay up to $6,500. And for the phase two, we will pay up to $50,000 for companies to participate in the TABA program. Then there's what's called the TABA Needs Assessment Program. And this is actually for our active phase one awardees. So our phase one awardees can request, they are actually asked to fill out a questionnaire, and based on what you provide in the questionnaire, our contractor will give an unbiased report on one of the 4 areas that is stated in the slide. So we encourage our phase one awardees to leverage this free service and use the report to help them put together a robust phase two application. So the road to commercialization can often, be difficult to navigate and seem uncertain. So the NIH Seed Office has a variety of programs and resources at various stages to help NIH awardees bring their innovations to life. The Company Showcase program is where our colleagues from the Seed Office will work with you to identify your company's needs and help you go to events where you can pitch your product or tool. They are, the NIH contractors are experienced in helping both early and late stage companies, and they understand how to build businesses. They will help you how to talk to investors and strategic partners and communicate the product development milestones. Then there are free consulting services, and anyone who has received funding, any type of funding from the NIH, it can be a prize competition, a training grant, an SBIR award, an R01 award, whatever, as long as you have received funding from NIH within the past 2 years, you are eligible to request a consult. And I would strongly encourage all awardees to leverage this service as well. There are many ways you can stay connected with NCATS. And if you have any questions, please send me an email and I'm happy to chat with you and provide feedback on whether your work would be of interest to NCATS. Thanks again for this opportunity, and I hope to hear from you all in the future.
All right, this is Kelly. I'm going to cut in here. Meena, that was an incredibly informative presentation. I appreciate all your time. We're going to have to cut off because of time. I just want to thank everybody for attending. And thank you, Meena, for your presentation. I'll just shout out the Wyoming Business Development Center is here to help anybody who has any questions. If you are a startup in Wyoming doing SBIR, please reach out. Thank you, Meena, again. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.